Welcome to the No BS Wellness Podcast. I'm Nicole Budden.
And I'm Shanna Obluck. We're your hosts of this no-nonsense podcast that dives into the power of holistic wellness. We have fun interviewing credible wellness experts and then break it down for you into real human speak.
No BS allowed.
Welcome back to the No BS Wellness Podcast. In this episode, we are talking with Asosa Adosamwan, also known as Raw Girl, and we are talking to her about one of her passions, which is agelessness. Asosa is a certified nutrition specialist, a behavioral coach, and a published author who also has her master's of science in nutrition and integrative health. And she went back and got that after 10 years of informal study, writing, and coaching on holistic wellness and nutrition, and really around this idea of agelessness. So we get into learning a little bit about how she, first of all, just got into being a holistic health and nutritional coach, and how she really learned from her own struggles with her health and fixing things like acne and some other health things, and then becoming this go-to person for friends, family, colleagues, and all of that. So we learn about that, and then we dive into this conversation surrounding agelessness and what that means, and what is, in essence, a bit of a simple formula to agelessness, but something that we all kind of struggle with because it's not what we talk about in this modern world. So it's daily habits surrounding your health and wellness, and getting very familiar with your own body and doing what's right for you. So sounds simple, right? But maybe not so simple after all with the societal pressures. So we talk with Asosa about it. She is just a wealth of information, and I think everybody listening is going to walk away with some really great insights and great tips on just what they can themselves do next to start approaching staying ageless. So we really hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it with Asosa. Hi, Asosa. Welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have this conversation with you today.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, ladies.
Yes. So lots of ground to cover today, but to get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into nutrition and holistic wellness?
Yeah, long story, but I'll make it shorter. I am Nigerian American, and I decided to go vegan at the age of 13, which is like a horror story for a Nigerian parent. What do you mean? You know what I mean? So I was already vegan, I was plant-based, and I guess I just felt better that way. And when I got to post-college, I would say, is when I sort of had like a health crisis. I had chronic fatigue, horrible acne. I was working a lot in front of the camera as an actress, and also I was doing some modeling. And I just remember, like, you know, fashion editors like pointing at my face and being like, yikes, you know, because I had acne and I didn't know how to get rid of it. So I was having some health issues, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Even though I was vegan, I was eating unhealthy things. And child, I lived at the vegan bakery. They were like, ma'am, do you work here? And I was like, I'm so sorry, I do not, but I'm here to get my carrot cake, you know? So I was kind of addicted to sugar, eating a lot of vegan junk food, not necessarily eating the best. And I also had some other issues that I didn't realize until later. But basically, the health crisis that I had pushed me to reconfigure my diet. I took this raw food class from this amazing couple in Harlem. The restaurant used to be called like Raw Soul or something. And I basically became 100% raw foodist. And I did that for about 2 months, and my skin completely cleared up. Like there was like nothing, no acne scars were gone, no more blemishes. And I was like, wow, this is amazing, because I had this moment where it was a very much like a movie moment where you go into your bathroom, you just like throw everything into the trash can, like frantically. And you're like, forget all these, you know, proactive and all this stuff. Because I realized that I needed to do something internally to deal with the issue. So once I actually healed my skin and my skin was like glowing and popping, I moved from New York down to Virginia, which is where I went to high school and where my family's from mostly. And I just finally could hear my own thoughts being outside of New York. And I heard the good Lord say, start a blog. And I was like, what's a blog? And I had to Google it because this was well before people, like all these people had blogs. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I am a writer anyway. And I found that when I was going to grocery stores and just going about my day, people were always asking me why I was buying certain vegetables or supplements. And I was really obsessed with like reading about every supplement and writing about it and, you know, sharing all this information. And I was like, I can't be in the grocery store for 3 hours every time I go to the grocery store. It'd be so much better if I just wrote an article, had the blog, and just been like, hey, go check out my blog. So that's what I did. I started a blog called Raw Girl in the Toxic World. And it was based on this, you know, epiphany of like, oh my God, the world is super toxic. There's so many things coming at us that are trying to, you know, erode our health. And so started the blog, was blogging for, in total, I blogged for about 10 years, but 5 years into it, I realized, and this was around my entertainment career, it was just more of a hobby. I realized I was getting all these messages from readers being like, giving me really detailed like information about their health problems. Like they told me all their business because they felt like they knew me and they were reading the blog. And I was like, sir, ma'am, you should really go see a doctor. Like I am not the one. But, you know, I felt bad about it because I kept turning people away who were like, can you help me with this? What should I take? What should I do? And I was like, I always felt kind of weird about being a health coach or someone who kind of like tried to tell everyone else to eat the same way anyway. So I was very uncomfortable and I just would, you know, tell them, please, you should go see a professional that's licensed. And then at one point I just got tired of turning people away. And I also was like, I'm clearly obsessed. I literally am like, this is like it's something that comes so natural to me. Like I'd be on a television set and other actresses would be like, what do I do about my skin? I'm like, girl, have you tried coconut oil? You know what I mean? I just can't stop myself from doing it. So I was like, I'm going to go get a master's. I need to understand the science of the body. I need to be able to address, I in particular was very interested in being able to address specific health conditions with nutrition and holistic lifestyle changes. And so I looked into it, and certified nutrition specialist was just like where it was at for me, because I was interested in doing media stuff. And I also was interested in like really honing in on how like I could deal with any condition and figure it out using holistic stuff. So that's what I did. I went and got my master's, and then here we are, child. I mean,
I love your story because I always so inspired by people who just know what they are passionate about and go do it, and also by those little tidbits that people give you along the way of like people messaging you or stopping you in the grocery store. Like those are like little signs, I think, you know, from God or higher power, whatever you want to believe in. So it's very cool that you listened to that and moved forward in that way. I did have one question about what you said, which is that you switched to a raw, I think, I'm not exactly the term you call it, I exactly remember the term you called it, but a raw food diet, basically. Can you just describe a little bit more what that specifically is versus just like a regular vegan, I guess?
Yeah. So a raw vegan diet, it's not for everyone. So please don't somehow like convert just from listening to this. A raw vegan diet is basically a plant-based diet in which you don't eat food cooked above a certain temperature. I can't remember if it's 118 degrees Fahrenheit. It probably is, but it's something like that, right? Where it's like you don't. So you, with raw food eating, you use dehydrators instead of baking. You blend things, you dice things, but you're not heating things. And the whole point is to retain the nutrient content of the food. But the thing about it that doesn't always work for some people, like I have a lot of clients now who have digestive issues, or like, you know, they just can't even deal, or food allergies that are very specific to specific vegetables and fruits and whatever. So there are certain conditions that wouldn't do well with it. should everyone be eating a lot more raw food? Yes, because that just means that you're eating more fresh, you know what I mean? Fresh food. But yeah, so that's basically what I did. I was just like not eating cooked food, which of course, like that at that point, my parents were, I'm surprised they didn't pass out. Like,
trust me, we're both from the Midwest, from small little towns. So totally understand parents not getting it.
Yeah. When I told my parents that I was going plant-based, my dad looked at me seriously and was like, you can't drink milk. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, Dad, I get it. So totally hear that. So you went and got your master's. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, well, I'm a nerd. So I've been a nerd my entire life. So just, you could be in entertainment and still be a nerd. I've always been a nerd. I had a full tuition scholarship to go to college. Like, I've always been really intense. So, and then I think what came out, which is so interesting, how like our early formative years with experiences with teachers can affect what we gravitate towards. And I had a very unfortunate experience with a teacher who was not very kind to people of color when I was in about 7th. And she was like a biology or one of those sciences. So I think it turned me off from science in a way that, and I always gravitated towards English because I loved my English teacher. And then like when I came back to it in a master's, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually really into this. Like, I'm like super into this. I probably would have figured it out earlier if I didn't have that random teacher. But no, it was, I really don't like school. I enjoy learning so much, but I always enjoy learning on my own terms. So I had to, die to myself and do the process. It took me about 5 years because I was still shooting television shows and doing other things. So it was a little intense because I would be like going off for a semester, then I come back on, and it was a little crazy, but I made it, child. I'm here. But yeah, I think the school that I went to is Maryland University of Integrative Health, and it is an incredible school. They are really dope, and they really give you all of the tools to deal with so many things. So I was really grateful afterwards that I went there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let's start talking about agelessness, because I saw on your website, and I know you have the Staying Ageless University and all that you're kind of self-proclaimed obsessed with agelessness. So what do you mean by that?
So most people are like, oh my God, she must be into anti-aging. And it's like, no. So I basically got obsessed in my early 20s. I met this woman. There were several people who formed this, this obsession, but there was this one particular woman that I met at an entertainment event who was double my age. Like, I was hanging out with her, thought she was like my peer. And then she was like, no, I'm 42. And I was like, what? And so it was like, what are you eating? What are you doing? What's going on? Like, when do you sleep? Like, the whole thing. And I was like, this is insane. Like, oh, okay, I could take really good care of myself, and then I don't have to age at the rate that everyone says that you do. Like, people just kind of like let themselves go after 30. And it's like, what are you doing? And there's a whole other reality. So then I started just like Googling and researching, people who were 60 plus, 70 plus, not on medications, super healthy, super energized. And I was like, that's what I want. I'm going to, y'all want to do that other stuff? That's fine. I'm gonna be over here with these people, right? So then I wanted to, as I became a nutritionist, I didn't know I was going to be a nutritionist then. I was just interested in like, being off medication and feeling great and looking great, and as long as I could. But as I became a nutritionist, then it was like, okay, I'm going to interview these people. I'm going to find these people. I'm going to talk to them. And I want to figure out what are the common denominators between them. What are they all doing? Because I want to know for my own research. And I want to also be able to help other people achieve that as well if they want to. So that's basically where it kind of started.
Interesting. So what did you find then? What factors do affect the aging process?
So there's 3 areas that I noticed were similar, right? Across. So diet, elimination, and lifestyle. They all had like sort of rituals in these areas. And I call them rituals, but basically like they're obsessed with daily habits. I don't know if you guys know like Jack LaLanne, fitness guy. He had a crazy workout routine, but it wasn't like, oh, Jack LaLanne worked out for a week and then he stopped. No, it was Jack LaLanne worked out every single day, woke up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., whatever that time was. You know what I mean? Had his whole regimen. And it's just people get you notice that all of these people, no matter how intense or non-intense their routine, they have the routine and they do not vary from it. They do not get tired of doing the same bloody thing every single day. So diet-wise, I noticed I interviewed a lot of people who were doing a lot of plant-based diets and were looking, ageless and had a lot of energy. Bernardo Lapayo, when I interviewed him, he was 109 and he was a raw foodist and he only ate meat like once or twice a month, maybe as a delicacy. He lived till he was 114, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah. And then like, Annette Larkins, the ageless woman, she grew food in her garden. Her husband, funnily enough, is a butcher, but then she did a plant-based diet, mostly raw food. So I was interested in that. So that was one thing. And then I also got into the research, which, one of the most, highly studied diets for longevity is the Mediterranean diet. So there's a lot of stuff around the Mediterranean diet, but I'm African. And like, I can tell you that I was just in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I was hanging out this young boy who's like he's like sort of like my little adopted son. His grandfather lived until he was 126.
Wow.
And so there's all kinds of stories in Africa that nobody's documented. And I'm very interested in figuring all this out because I'm like, these people y'all talking about people living to 100 something. I'm hearing stories about people living to like 130, 100 and you know what I mean? And I'm like, what? So there's something there, right? But I noticed that, so when I say diet, elimination, lifestyle, so elimination is just really just like, aging is going to happen, right? The point is that we need to slow it. And how do we slow it? Well, we need less toxins coming in, right? So we're always putting in toxins, we overload the body, we get sicker, or we age faster kind of thing, right? So it's having the ability to actually have our colon work properly. So we're eating enough fiber and stuff. So we're actually eliminating. And then lifestyle wise, I noticed all of the people that I talked to had super positive mental outlook on life. Like even if bad things happen, they'd be like, "Yeah, it'll be okay," And you're like, how do you do that? Some of them had faith. Like Bernardo Lapayo was Christian. He was really into it. That kept him grounded. So some of it was faith. Some maybe like more like community, like they had a really strong community. I really do think that matters. I think that this pandemic has really driven that home for a lot of people too. We're social beings and you can erode people's health just by immediately taking away all their community, right? So it's all of those things, but it comes down to daily habits, which is what I teach people. I really kind of help them figure out what diet and exercise is best for their body, especially women. And then how to like then create rituals that they create these routines for themselves that's going to lead them to the agelessness, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. I got to wake up every day. I have a Pilates reformer right behind me. It's like, I just did my Pilates this morning. I got to do it every day.
I love that. So kind of stepping back to talking about toxins, because I know like detoxing and, there's a lot out there, especially when you look in like the wellness world about that. And like, are there certain things with detoxing so that somebody doesn't have to like, I have to go on this like detox diet every month or something like that? Like, what are some of the key things that somebody just to keep in mind from like their toxic load, and how do they either keep that, minimize that, or detox in a more like natural, easy way, so it doesn't have to be this extreme of, okay, I can pump my body through a bunch of toxins and then just do this detox diet that's awful and I'm suffering, but then I'm back at zero.
Right. No, I hear you. So I was using the term toxins very loosely, but let me break it down for you. So the body naturally detoxifies like the body will naturally detoxify. There's a whole process. So like when people talk about doing a detox, it's actually kind of silly, but we still use it. We still use this terminology because it's so popular, you know? But really when you're talking about encouraging detox, right? Or supporting, so you need to support the methylation cycle. So you need certain B vitamins. You just basically need to support the body to produce energy efficiently and eliminate efficiently, right? So remember I told you a lot of the people I talked to had plant-based diets. Well, the thing is that plant-based diets are high in antioxidants, which stop free radicals, which are unstable electrons, from creating a bunch of damage in the cells, right? So that obviously, if I'm creating less damage, remember I said we're going to age. So don't think that you won't age, but it's like, it's a matter of how slowly you will age, right? So it's like, if I'm eating a lot of antioxidants, which you're going to get more from plant-based foods, I'm likely going to age slower, likely, right? So that's one of the things so detoxing is thrown around a lot, and it can be very confusing to people, but it's like, just know that your body will naturally detoxify. But what people are doing who are achieving longevity is they've basically figured out a way to eat in a way where their body, that is optimized. There's less stress on the body. And then when I say toxins, I also should mention environmental toxins. I mean, if you were in Flint, Michigan, drinking that water, I don't think you would have a good chance of living a really long time without a whole bunch of health diseases, right? Or health problems, right? Or if you were living next to a tower, or you're in environment matters so much. The guy that I just mentioned that was 126, he lived by No. 2 Beach in Freetown. Like, he had a very chill life. Like, he was grounding all the time, walking on the sand. Do you know what I mean? No stress, because stress will kill you faster. So one of the things I always found fascinating, because my grandmother on my mother's side, actually on both sides, my mom's mom lived until she was 101. And then my dad's side, I think she lived to 99 or something like that. And I'm always like, can I replicate that though? Because, you know, like they were like living in Africa, living a very specific life, getting enough sun, very active, always moving, all of that stuff. And so I realized how important environment was, which is why I just spent a month in Freetown, which is why I'm going back, because I'm really interested in setting up. I just felt better. I was like, I need to set up my life to support these goals. And, you know, we go through various stages where we realize what we need to do that. So, you know, it's not like you got to like move today, but, you know.
Put it on your list.
Yeah. Maybe don't live in cold, snowy Chicago year round. have a summer or a winter home.
Exactly.
Someday. So I love that perspective of basically, like you're saying, like the nutrition and the elimination are really ways to achieve the lower toxin levels and all of that outside of environment, which I get that's separate in some ways, because if you have all this environmental stuff creating toxins in your body, then the diet can only do so much. So I get that, but that's helpful to understand that, because I haven't heard it that clearly broken down before. So I really like that. And I'm also curious if there are specific aspects that need to be tailored to an individual, like, because those seem to be very, general for anyone. Are there things that like are very specific to somebody, and how would you go about understanding that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I teach and that's what I do. I help people sort through the Googles, because I don't believe in diet books. I actually hate them. I read a lot of books, but I hate diet books. Why? Because I think that people who write diet books, at least a diet that's prescribed, that they're like, everyone should do this, they actually don't know anything about health, and they probably have never seen a client. I learned that very early on when I was seeing, like, I worked in this wellness clinic, and I was seeing like 300 clients a month. And it was like one person would come in and be like, every time I eat dairy, I want to throw up. And the other person would be like, I love dairy. You know what I mean? It's like, what? This is so weird. But it's like, I think that there are certain common things that can be removed from diets in general that are inflammatory. So people are realizing that dairy does not go well, especially my clients, African Americans. I think it's 75% lactose intolerant. So it's really not our friend, right? And then gluten, a lot of people, it's over processed. And then excess sugar and salt, right? So those kinds of things are like, you could almost say this is a common denominator. But what I do is I use a combination of factors. When I'm seeing someone and I'm not teaching them, I'm going to look at several things. I'm going to look at their family history of disease. I'm going to look at how they're eating, their health history, what chronic conditions they actually have right now. I look at their body type. I look at their metabolic type. I look at their dosha. I'm really big on Ayurveda. I integrate that as well. So all of those things, there's like several factors that can be taken into play, but this is why I teach my class Staying Ageless 30 Plus, because I actually teach people how to identify their body type and what that means. So then they just know themselves. So they know, okay, I am carb efficient, or I am this. And so if I go off and do this random diet, that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to ignore that Google article that I saw and I'm going to do what it said, and I'm going to feel great, you know? So it is important to be very specific. There is no one size fits all diet. Bio-individuality is king. And even more so king is genetics. I'm very interested in where like our genes meet nutrition and how that all works out, because I really feel like we could stop people from having crazy diseases if, when they're really young, like let's say you're 14 and they're like, let's sit you down. Let's talk to mommy and daddy about all their health problems and everyone in their family and all their health problems. And then let's look at your genetic SNPs and what you might be predisposed to. And then after we do all that, let's design a lifestyle and a way of eating and being that's going to prevent you from ever getting that. Because your lifestyle can actually trump your genetics. We've already proven that, right? So that's the way that we should be approaching health from a proactive perspective. But instead, we're just like, we just run through life and then we're like, oh snap, I'm eating like my grandmother, and then I got diabetes, and now I gotta, like, you know what I mean? It's like, this, guys, let's be proactive.
Hey, you know, it's so simple when you say that, but we're just like not geared towards that. That's just like not how our health system's set up, not how we're like taught in school. It's just kind of like, here's the food pyramid, now go forth. Yeah,
well, we're treating sickness instead of promoting health. See, I'm in the business of promoting health. People come to me with problems, they leave without them. When they go to the doctor, they're just stopping your symptoms temporarily. They have not gotten to the root cause of why that has happened. And so that thing can persist and grow and grow. And then you just keep, one medical intervention always leads to another medical intervention. And then the next thing you know, you're iller and iller and iller. You see what I'm saying? So you have to kind of like, I call it the Western medicine matrix. You have to leave the matrix. Exit. You have to exit the matrix if you want to be well. You have to start promoting health, which means I'm healthy right now. I don't just ignore it. I don't just, you know how you go to a doctor and they're like, your blood work looks fine, it's great, whatever, you know? Yeah. No. I go to my Chinese medicine doctor. I get acupuncture every single month. I do my workouts. I check in on, you know what I mean? It's like proactiveness, not just waiting to be reactive to a health problem.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad had, he passed away last year, but he had a lot of health issues. And I can completely relate to the idea of the medical intervention leading to another medical intervention, to another pill, to another pill. It's like, I can't even tell you how many pills he was taking towards the end. It's just insane.
And did any of them help him?
No, it's just insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm obsessed with being agelessness now. I definitely want to learn everything I can from you. One thing though that is interesting about that is if you live to 126, like there's a lot of things you're going to have to deal with. So I know one of the things that you talked about in one of your blog posts is about being resilient, and that being one of the true markers of health. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So what I mean by that is resilience being the true marker of health is how fast is my body equipped to bounce back? Because life is going to happen. Corona happens. We don't know if there's going to be another one, pandemic. We don't know. I mean, I've helped now 6 clients go from testing positive with Corona to not, right? Now, the ability to do that means that you should have had some reserves beforehand. One of them was my uncle, who's 75 and runs marathons. So he's just not an average senior. So when we took him through the process, he was fine. He gave him the supplements, told him to do certain things, and he was fine. He recovered. But I don't know if he hadn't been doing the marathon running and doing the eating and doing the stuff, would he have been as resilient? No, someone the same age as him probably died, right? So it's like building resilience, again, goes back to your daily habits, because it goes to what am I doing every single day to keep my immunity up? It also deals with emotional resilience, because stress is like a huge killer, as we know. The more stressed we are, the more likely we are to get any chronic condition. I can't tell you the number of women that I see who deal with emotional trauma and disease that comes from emotional trauma. It is really, really bad, because, you know, if women, we take things in and then our body is processing it. And then sometimes our body processes it as, let's create a fibroid, or let's create this, or whatever it is. It adds to our health problems. So there's the emotional part of it, there's the physical part of it, but all of it ties in again to just holistic wellness, meaning, am I moving my body? Am I eating in a way that makes sense? Am I working in harmony with nature? That's a big thing in Ayurveda and in Chinese medicine. No one ever talks about that in Western medicine. Everyone just assumes that if you're at a job you hate for 10 years, that, oh, well, suck it up. But that can kill someone. It actually can. So it's really important to be in harmony with like what you're like, enjoying what you do, in harmony with the place that you live, all of those things. And all of those things build together to create our resilience, our ability to bounce back. And the only thing I didn't mention that I think is super important is community. Like I talked about earlier, it's like if you take away someone's community, their resilience will definitely be diminished. They've done studies where they've had like married couples that are healthy, you know, holding each other's hands when something is, you know, like they're being poked or something is like, you know, something disturbing. And the person who was with a partner who they loved for real actually healed faster, right? So we know that like this matters, like having really strong relationships matter. And in all of the people that I've talked to who were like, I call them ageless superstars, like they always had a sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of that makes sense as far as like ensuring that you have good resilience, but how does somebody know kind of what their baseline resiliency is, other than if they go through a pandemic and then are confronted with it? Like how do you kind of measure that or become more aware of that in yourself?
Yeah, I think you can become aware. That is such a good question. I'm always really pondering this, just because I'm a highly intuitive person. I pay so much attention to my body. If I notice a little pain or whatever, I'm like, where's that from? Was that from my workout? Or did I, you know what I mean? Like I'm always analyzing, but I think that most people are kind of shut down. So they are not even paying attention to the signs that their body is trying to tell them in the first place before it gets crazy. So, I mean, I think you can start by paying attention every single day to what you're feeling, what you're doing. You need to assess your health regularly. Generally speaking, if you have a chronic condition, obviously your resilience is already low, right? You're already in a state of imbalance. So you have to rectify that. If you're not, then good news is great. But then what happens? Are you getting colds all the time? Are you noticing like any little thing happens and you're sick again? That's an indicator of your resilience. Like I rarely get sick, rarely. You know what I mean? And I know the exact things I have to do in order to get sick. Not sleep. That's the first one for me. Like my immunity goes out the window if I don't sleep. So it's learning to listen and really pay attention to the signs and symptoms your body is trying to tell you, which I think kind of goes in, it goes hand in hand with mindfulness, like actually being able to be still with yourself. I think people are just going. And then they get to a doctor's office and they're like, oh, you have this diagnosis. And they're like, wait, what? You know, but it's like, there probably were signs along the way. You might've had some breakdowns, maybe too much work stress, and you just ignored it. You just kept pushing it to the side until it, you know, basically became this huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that because I have really, Shanna's been plant-based for a while, but I've been eating more and more plant-based over the last like 18 months or so. And I've definitely noticed that I've rarely gotten sick, rarely. And I can think back to a time in college when, you know, I was probably drinking too much and eating like, crap food, whatever's cheap around and all that, and got sick all the time. So yeah, so I think that's a great way to, your body can tell you pretty easily if you just kind of check in and pay attention a little bit. That's cool.
Definitely.
So, yeah. So a little bit back to ageless, which I know resilience is totally a part of it too, but tell us about your Staying Ageless University.
Yes. So Staying Ageless University is basically our destination for healing programs. So Raw Girl Coaching is my company, and we do one-on-one nutritional consultations there. And we also have memberships now because I have a dynamic change therapist, a naturopathic doctor, and certified nutrition specialist. So we basically work with people from a holistic perspective, and you can get packages where you see all of us, which is really great because you kind of have a team working for you. But the Staying Ageless University came from basically, I'm like a teacher at heart. I think I got it from my mom. My mom was a Sunday school teacher, and she also taught at a university level at one point. And I just really realized that in order to get people to actually change, I have to give them information. Like you guys are taking in this information right now, and it's probably going to change how you feel about things. But a lot of times when we go to a doctor's office, they just tell us to do things and don't explain why. Sometimes when you ask them why, they're on Google themselves and you're like, wait, what are you doing? Or they, you know what I mean? Or they're just not giving you an in-depth, explanation. But learning is a part of behavioral change. This is why I'm a behavioral change coach. And so I have basically, over the period of, I've kind of had this crazy fast-tracked experience where I've seen thousands of clients in a very short period of time. And I started to kind of create a method for dealing with certain health conditions and realized that I can almost get the same outcome just by following the same process and giving the same information. So we have, I started my practice with Staying Ageless 30 Plus, which is the 8-week program. We've had people reverse hypertension, reverse diabetes, get off of. Last class, we had this woman who had gastrointestinal issues that were unexplained. She was on 3 medications. She had anxiety. She ended the class with none of those things and on no medications. We've had people lose up to 30 pounds in that class. But then their habits have changed. So like the woman who lost 30 pounds hit us up like a year later and she was like, I lost another 30 pounds, So their habits have changed, but it's also because we're equipping them with the tools they need to understand their body type. We're also giving them stuff to understand habit forming and how to like actually create healthy habits and undo the bad habits. So we're giving so much information. This is why it's a university. It's like, you got to learn this stuff to get fired up about it. Because once you learn it, then you're like, oh, I can't go back now. Like now I know what's possible for me, So that's the first one. And then the other, so there was other programs in there. The other major one is the Hormonal Balancing Academy. And that came from, my God, the tragedy of, I literally was almost in tears, like my first year of practice, at the number of Black women calling with fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, but fibroids especially. It was like everyone had fibroids. And I was like, I am so exhausted with hearing this same story. Something has to be done about this. This is an actual epidemic. And I don't know why no one's talking about it, but it really actually is. And my first endometriosis client, because endometriosis and fibroids are very similar. They're both estrogen dominance. And my first endometriosis client is actually, she's an actress, and she no longer has endometriosis symptoms. And we worked together for 9 months. And so I figured out that within about 6-month period, I can take someone from hormonally imbalanced to balanced. And we created a whole system where they get education up front, they get an initial consult, and then they're seeing a certified nutrition specialist for the rest of the time. And that helps them move along and like make tweaks to their diet, manage their stress better, all that stuff. And then we also do testing that you can't get at the doctor's office. So we do saliva hormone testing, which is really important. Every woman should really actually do a saliva hormone test because you get to see your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone over your whole cycle. You can see what's happening. How am I ovulating? What's going on? And this is information that someone needs if they're hormonally imbalanced. So these are the two core programs. And then we have my immune boosting protocol, which is the one that I use to help people who were on had corona. But I didn't want to see much of people with corona, child. So I was like, look, just go get this protocol. It'll be fine. And it also just helps with boosting immunity in general. We also used it to help people. We had my clients do it before they got vaccinated. And then after they got vaccinated, we had them doing acupuncture, which helped realign and rebalance and prevent some of those crazy symptoms afterwards. So that's on there. And then there's a Candida and parasites cleanse, basically. And that's something that I just kept seeing everywhere. I actually suffered from this myself. I was poisoned by mercury. I had a dentist who put a lot of mercury fillings in, and I didn't realize it then, but that's where a lot of the chronic fatigue and all that stuff came from. And the problem is when you get poisoned by mercury, that can lead to candida overgrowth, which can lead to parasites, which could lead to a whole bunch of gut issues that are not fun. So I basically healed myself of this issue, and I did it within a very short period of time. Because if you go and like research this, you'll see that people are on these really weird, crazy long candida cleanses for like their whole lives, and they're miserable and they don't eat anything, and it's really strange. And I did it in like 2 months. And so I basically now created a program where I can take people through that if I notice they have those symptoms, or if they do a gut test with us and it shows that they have candida overgrowth, we can deal with it. So it's all about learning. It's learning, behavioral change, live your best life.
I love all of those offerings. They're so perfect, I think, for what we need in this world right now when you consider like health and well-being and what people need. I'm really interested. What is a dynamic change therapist?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So Bianca DeGroat works in my practice. She's a genius. Okay. I came across her because I was trying to help a client who had depression, who was an actress, who was in LA. And I was like, oh, I got to find someone, and they have to be really relatable, and they have to be in LA, and they have to help resolve this issue. But I don't have time for her to be in therapy for like 5 years. Like, we need to get this done now. So when I found Bianca, she's actually a clinical hypnotherapist. So she's actually a hypnotherapist as well. But she also does this type of therapy that in one session, in one like 2-hour session, 2 to 2.5 hour session, she can actually reprogram your subconscious mind and deal with the root cause of whatever like mental health issue or trauma or anything, child, in that 2.5 hours that you would have spent 5 years of your life in therapy. I'm telling you this from a firsthand perspective, because I was like, let me make sure she's not crazy. So I went and did a session with her. And then it was history, because you do a session with her, she gives you a recording, you listen to the recording for 30 days afterwards. And that helps to like put the seed in where you reprogram. And my life was totally different around the area that I did it for, like night and day. Like different things started showing up. I was like, this is like some sort of magic. Like this is like weird. But the thing that really, really, really drove me to add it to my practice and incorporate it with my clients was I started to realize that there are so many health conditions that have a subconscious root. So people have internalized trauma, or they've internalized beliefs about themselves that also manifest in health conditions. And the medical world does not deal with these things. But when I deal with these things, I can permanently change somebody's health outcome. Because if you go and see me and I tell you to do this, do that, do a diet, let's say you've been dieting your whole life, and I'm like, change this, we're going to do a lifestyle change, but your mind is still yo-yoing between like not feeling worthy and whatever your mom called you when you were a kid and it was horrible, you know what I mean? All those horrible things. What will happen is you might be successful at the beginning for a little bit. And then at some point you'll yo-yo back to your normal subconscious programming. But if I change your subconscious programming, I can change your health outcome for good. You will not be the same person. You will literally continue losing weight, feel great, and be like, oh my God, I feel so great about myself. And that's what happens. And so our clients get really amazing transformations this way. And so that's why I started incorporating it. And I'm like, you have the option to do this. And I usually suggest it when there's somebody, when I meet with that person and I know, okay, you have a lot of trauma. We have a lot of clients who've been molested, raped, all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's like, if they've had these kinds of situations, then you internalize things like, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, all this stuff. And you really have to get rid of it, because if you have, I'm not worthy playing in your head, do you really think you're going to like want to eat a salad and make yourself feel great and exercise? Not really, not for that long. You know what I mean? So that's the dynamic change therapy.
Oh,
cool.
I love that. I like want to dive deeper into that. I think that is, I mean, you're speaking my language with reprogramming and all of that stuff. So cool. Okay. So as we're coming up on time here, to kind of tie a nice bow on this conversation, what would you tell somebody who is intrigued by the idea of agelessness, wants to start to dabble in it? What would you say? Okay, here's my top 3 tips. Like, if you're getting started, here's the top 3 things to start with.
Oh man, top 3. Well, I think it would just go back to what I said earlier, which would be find what diet actually works for your body based on your whole family history, genetics, whatever, and stick with it, right? Move your body. I think that would be the second one. Move your body regularly. They've shown that there was this one study at the University of Birmingham Institute for Inflammation and Aging, and they showed that these 79-year-old cyclists, I think they were like 11 years younger, or they had the same physiology as people who were like 30 or something like that. It was a little crazy, right? But it's like exercise has been proven to slow aging and to help us feel great. And it's kind of like, if you don't move it, you lose it. I think anyone who's reached over 30, you start to feel things aching when you're not moving enough. And you're like, why am I aching? Like, I never ached in my entire life, right? But it's because you need to move it. You need to move it. So that, and then I think the last part has to do with just managing. I think stress has to be in the third one, because if you don't manage your stress well, you will get sick, which means, and managing stress isn't as simple as you think, because it's like, okay, I have to look at where all the places the stress is coming from. Some people have internal stressors, some people have external stressors, things like work, family, relationships that are toxic, environmental stressors from, like, we were talking about pollution and stuff like this, right? And then we have, the stress that we put on ourselves, kind of thing. And some people get sick because they're actually too perfectionist, or they're too hard on themselves internally. So they have this tape playing that's constantly kind of derogatory, you know what I mean, in their head. So we have to look at all of those types of stress and manage that well, which means figuring out what you need to reconfigure, woo-sawing, meditating, praying, doing all the things, you know what I mean? Whatever works for you, but you got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are great. It's a really, all of them are like so big. And yet, like, to your point, it comes back to daily habits and doing the things that every day fill you up in those areas. So I think that's really great.
Yeah. I wish there was a pill, child. People were like, is there a pill to say no? If there was a pill, then maybe I would have taken it by now. But I really, because I believe so much in habits, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably be like, I'm just going to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think once you start doing the work, I think the hardest part is like the creating of it, because once you start doing it, it just becomes second nature in my experience with habits. So yeah, I think that
exactly. Habits are all about repetition.
Yeah.
So figure it out and then repeat, and set up your life so that it makes it easy to do these things every single day.
Right. Yeah. Awesome. Well, then the last question, where can people find you if they want to learn more or work with you online, on social media, everything?
Yes, child. So on Instagram, I'm at the Raw Girl. Pretty much everywhere I'm at the Raw Girl on social media. The website for Raw Girl Coaching is therawgirl.com. If you go to therawgirl.com and click classes, it'll take you to stayingagelessuniversity.com. I have a podcast, a weekly podcast called Staying Ageless. And I think those are all the places. Yeah.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, Asosa, for coming on today. We love this conversation. You just have so much knowledge, and I can just tell you really take truly a holistic approach. It's not just like holistic from a nutrition standpoint, but truly the whole person. So we love that. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
You want me to do what?
So Nicole, you're telling me that there's a way that I can stay young forever?
Kind of. I mean, I think Asosa's got something here, which is the idea of staying as healthy and young as long as possible. I think she did say, like, everybody's going to get old.
Yes.
Can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But you can make it more graceful.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I definitely know. And it was kind of being tongue in cheek because I think agelessness or even anti-aging, and we just have something against aging in our society, which, it's so interesting to think about that because especially with everything opening up in the world and all of that stuff. And I mean, I definitely loved, my early 20s and all of that. But I see all of the youngsters like going out, being crazy, stumbling home, like throwing up on the side of the road. And I'm just like, I'm really glad that I'm like not 21 anymore. Like, I'm really glad that doesn't need to be my Friday and Saturday and nights and then my all day Sunday.
Yeah.
So.
I was never a good 20-year-old or 21-year-old. I'll say 21, so it was legal because I did all that stuff, like went out and got drunk and crazy and, in college and everything. But I have always like gone to bed early, gotten up early, been more of an early riser. So it just never really fit with my lifestyle. I would do it and I'd be exhausted and like I was having a lot of fun, but also I was really not healthy and I didn't feel good a lot of the time. And now I know why, because my more natural life of going to bed by 10 and getting up early and like taking care of myself. And I feel so much better. So I agree. I think I'm all for like, let's keep aging, but like, be as healthy and vital as possible.
Yeah. So after our conversation with Asosa, what did you take out of it? Like, is there anything that you're going to change or look into more after the conversation with her?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that I felt like I was totally missing so much as just like more of a focus on things that I've already started to do over the last couple of years as we've learned so much more in this holistic wellness world. I really loved her perspective on habits. I mean, I think again, like that's something that I knew and, we all know like daily habits help you to basically snowball effect on itself and improve things. But I don't know. I just didn't link it to like agelessness. I just think the way she's approaching things and thinking about longevity in a different and kind of fresh way is just, really refreshing, especially because it's cool because what I feel like a lot of times in the wellness world, it's like you have to like strip away all of the like glamour and all of the things that like are maybe are like luxuries sometimes. Like it feels like, oh, I have to be so natural and I can't do anything that's like luxurious. And I'm sure that's not the case for everybody, but that's just kind of how it feels sometimes. So I love Asosa's approach because she was a model and she was an actress and she can still be beautiful and be a raw diet, have a raw diet. And so I love that she's blending all the things that she loves and is not ashamed of it, is not, just like is herself. I think it's really cool. So I think the habits are awesome. I think the diet is something that, again, I said I've started to, eat more plant-based, but I think just like hearing her and the spin she has on it, I'm like, yeah, I need to even do more. Like I really do. I'm behind. I was already behind the idea of longevity, but I just think she helped me understand it so much more and position it in a way that made me even more excited about it.
Yeah. I think she just took and tied like all pieces of wellness that people talk about and that people latch on to certain parts and bits. And, and not to say that there aren't other people out there that's taking a more 360 approach, but I think there's certain people who are like lifestyle and then they really, diet, and then they really promote diet, or exercise and really promote exercise. And then they might also talk about diet or might talk about lifestyle and stuff like that, but it's not, they have their like one focus, whereas she's like, listen, it's all of this stuff and not one should be the focus. And when you tie all of this together, this is what wellness is. This is what's going to promote longevity and have you feeling good in your body. So don't get, yes, learn the right diet for you, the right exercise, the right lifestyle changes, less stress, all of that stuff, but don't get hung up on any one piece. Because you can have a stellar diet, but if you're super stressed because of the work that you do, you can't eat your way out of being not stressed. Right. Also, you could have a really horrible diet and be super chill, and you also can't be super chill out of just eating Oreos every day for every meal. Like, right. it's the whole thing, and so I really liked that. But I think the thing that really stuck out for me and is something that I've kind of started to evaluate a little bit more, and I really wouldn't say necessarily that it's groundbreaking, because I do think that for me it's been something that I've been paying more attention. But I think just from the whole point of what we were just talking about, of looking at it as a 360 approach, is as in everything, not just work or like how I exercise, but also looking at relationships and daily habits and things that I feel like I have to do. And one of the things that she said was like, create or find a lifestyle that promotes less stress in the body. And I mean, we always talk about stress. So many people talk about why you need to have less stress, but I think really looking at it as, okay, what all goes into lifestyle, not just work. Work's one piece, but like, what are all of those factors and what is causing stress? And then how do I build a lifestyle around that and not necessarily, doesn't even have to necessarily being taking certain things completely out. Maybe it is, but sometimes it's just even adjusting the approach to it, or not putting as much stock into something so that there is just a little bit less stress with things. Or maybe it's, if people are going back to commuting, it's okay, how do I shake up that commute so that I'm not sitting there being stressed out for 90 minutes one way, but can I leave earlier and get to work earlier so I can leave earlier, so it's just not as many cars on the road and I am less stressed for longer periods of time. So I feel like that was one thing that I've just really started to think about. Okay, where are all those factors in my life that are more stressful, and how can I already start to change them? Yeah. And if it's not going to be a simple change and a bigger thing, how can I start planning towards that? I mean, to like her point of wanting to spend more time in Africa and after her trip, and that lifestyle and kind of being on the beach and everything like that, it's, that's not necessarily something that she's just said, okay, I'm going to do that tomorrow and drop everything. It's going to take planning. But I think having that awareness, so that's kind of what I'm trying to cultivate right now, is let me look at all aspects and take myself off of autopilot. Yeah. So that I can know. And I don't know. So I think there's a lot of things I do that promote less stress in my body, but I don't think I'm quite there either.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think that a lot of times we all think about, how do I manage the stress? How do I, and that's such a Western way to think about it. Well, how do I like add something? How do I add CBD, or how do I like do whatever, whatever thing it is to help manage the stress? And I think, again, going back to like holistic and preventing, she's thinking about stress in the way of like, well, how do you prevent it? And it's through your daily habits, because the things that are stressful every day are going to have a bigger effect than the one-off time you're going to be, traveling for a long time and it's going to be stressful. So I agree. That's a really good one. I love that, the way you framed it up too and thought about it, because I think it's not normal for us, at least in my experience in, the United States, to think about stress that way and think about our lifestyle as flexible. And it is, we can create whatever life we want, especially right now as things are opening back up. And to your point, it's not going to be overnight all the time for a big change, but it's possible if you want it and if you're just aware. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like just kind of that idea of stepping away from managing stress because you're right. That is something that we talk about. And I got, it's like, yes, I guess. I mean, sometimes you just have to manage stress, but how can you get to a point that you don't have to manage it?
Right. There's as little stress as possible in your life because you've developed your life that way.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that.
Right. So when she talked about kind of the eliminating toxins and detox and all of that, we had a bit more conversation around that. How do you feel like you do with that aspect in your life, just as far as like all sorts of toxins? Do you feel like you have a good way of reducing them, and B, have like good elimination mechanisms set up?
That helped me understand toxins in relation to your body and diet so much better. I didn't really realize, although I guess it makes sense, the whole connection between if you're eating a really healthy whole food diet that helps you get all the nutrients you need to be able to eliminate effectively, that your body is naturally flushing out those toxins. I mean, it makes sense because how else do you get rid of toxins? But I just didn't really connect those two. So that was really helpful for me to understand. And I think was another reason why I feel like my diet and the plant-based diet, and just as much as I can to continue to improve what I'm eating, is the focus for me as it relates to everything, but toxins is a part of that. And then I think outside of that, I haven't honestly, besides anytime we have a conversation with somebody about toxins, when we did Branch Basics and when we talked about clean beauty, I'm like, or even the tech toxins, I was not thinking about any of those before. And so now I'm just a lot more aware. And so I try to, I've started, using more clean beauty products, and what else? The cleaning products. I put some of the stuff that really smells bad in a drawer so that it's not right next to where we eat all the time. And so I've done little things like that to start to eliminate toxins. But I think the thing that's interesting for me is when we were talking with Branch Basics about, some people have a higher constitution or a stronger constitution and a lower constitution. I've never really noticed toxins affecting me. And so I think that I probably have a bit stronger of a constitution than others who have serious medical issues because of toxins. And so I think that's why I haven't put a lot of focus on it, but is also why I really like the diet thing, because I do believe that my body is capable of flushing them out. So I think, of course, I want to manage them, and I can really rely on my body to do a lot of that if I'm just taking care of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. It's kind of like I've read a lot on the vegan diet, and, they talk so much about, there's the big thing with plastics and BPA plastics, and it's causing cancer. And it always seems like there's just some other thing out there that don't do this thing because it causes cancer. And while there are those Aaron Brockovich type situations where yes, that is absolutely going to cause cancer, there's a ton of research and books that I've read on it that talks about that, pretty much when we walk in this world, you can't avoid being exposed to something that's going to cause you cancer. So if that's your way to quote unquote prevent cancer, is to just try to avoid these things, you need to go and be a bubble person. And I don't know, I guess live in Antarctica or find some uninhabited island that also is perfectly set up for clean everything. It's just not possible. But if you eating the plant-based diet basically stunts cancer because it doesn't feed cancer cells versus some of like meat or like casein, which is the protein that's in dairy that feeds cancer cells. So it's more along the lines of like, just you can prevent cancer by not avoiding things, but instead by like just eating more of this good stuff and not feeding the cancer, the bad stuff. And I think that that's what's so interesting when you like even have this like toxin discussion is we can't completely avoid toxins, but then how do we like, what are things that we can do to support the body to eliminate toxins? Because even if you do start to, take out as much as you can and take the toxic load off, which I do think is an important step, you're still going to have them. So you still need to be able to eliminate them from your body. So yeah, I really liked that idea from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I really just appreciate how well-rounded Asosa is just in her understanding of wellness in general. I just think it's back to your point around, she's really taking a truly holistic approach. It's not just like, oh, well, I'm using a holistic diet. It's like, no, it's holistic means the whole body. And she's really approaching it that way. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Probably, one of the few truly holistic people that we've talked to.
I don't know. Yeah.
Like, I mean, really other people are definitely very, mindful of all these things, but they place an emphasis on,
right,
where their specialty might be. But while she is certified in nutrition, that's not the thing she focuses on, which I love.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
Yeah. So I don't know, anything else from being ageless?
No, I'm just real excited now to keep up in my ageless game.
So like, how do you want to live to 126?
I mean, here's what I want to do. I want to live as long as I'm going to live healthily. I don't want to be 80 and like can't move and miserable. So however old that is that I can live and be healthy, and then once it starts to go downhill, just let me go. It's fine.
Like just take me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, that was Asosa and agelessness.
Yeah.
So great conversation. And if you love this conversation, think anybody could benefit from it, super easy to share that in any one of those podcasts. Just hit that share button and send it on over. And then we always love hearing from you all. So please hit us up on social media on Instagram at No BS Wellness Podcasts or Facebook at No BS Wellness Podcasts. And check us out on our website, nobswellnesspodcast.com. Super easy to shoot us some comments or check out some of the great extra content that we have on the site. Thanks for listening to the No BS Wellness Podcast. Love what you're hearing? Subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode.
And head over to nobswellnesspodcast.com to access our fantastic bonus content. Until next time.